Hey guys, what is up? It is the Fast Break Report here, bringing you guys another video. It's been quite a while since I made a video, about probably almost a week, but there hasn't really been much going on. But we did get something earlier today that the Cleveland Cavaliers are finally looking to move Andre Drummond, and the rumor is they're trying to trade him to the Toronto Raptors. That is at least what the rumor is at the moment, is that like they're in active trade talks, and now all of a sudden it's kind of halted, mostly because if a trade's going to take place between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors for Andre Drummond, unfortunately they really don't have the players with the salary cap to make that trade happen. So they'd really have to get a third team involved. But there are a couple teams that I think could pull the trigger on Drummond and make a pretty enticing offer for Andre Drummond. And I think it would actually help some of these teams actually improve. And I actually wrote down a couple of them. Some of these trades, they sound like they're definitely reasonable. But I don't think Cleveland's going to get a lot for Andre Drummond, even if he is still one of the best, like, pure centers in the NBA. Like, he's not, like, he's not Joel Embiid by any means. He's not Nikola Jokic by any means, but he can play defense and get you rebounds. And there's a lot of teams in the NBA right now struggling with not only defense, but rebounding the basketball. And there's a couple teams that I think could really use Andre Drummond and actually benefit from like having him on the roster. So the first team that I think could make a really enticing offer for Andre Drummond is the Dallas Mavericks. It's pretty obvious they're struggling this year, and they've struggled to get a big man on their roster for a while. They struggled with DeAndre Jordan. Remember how he verbally committed to the Mavericks and then ended up signing with the Clippers. Then he was in free agency again, and they missed out on him to go to the Nets. So it's obvious that like the Mavericks are looking for a bona fide big man, and I think that's mostly because of Mark Cuban. I think Mark Cuban understands how important it is to have a big man in the NBA that can grab rebounds, play defense, and Andre Drummond can do that for you. Is he going to really wow you with points? Probably not. But it does give a chance for Kristaps Porzingis to be what he really is, a jump shooter. You know, you don't have to have Porzingis hanging out on the block all the time. You can play Porzingis at the 4, have Andre Drummond come in at the 5. He can rebound, play defense, get you second chance points underneath the basket, while you have Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis shooting the basketball, along with guys like Josh Richardson. So and they have Tim Hardaway Jr., I believe, on the roster as well. So how would this work? Well, it's just the idea. The Mavs could send a package of like James Johnson and Dwight Powell to the Cavaliers for a guy like Andre Drummond and maybe throw in a second round pick. I don't know. And even that, I think that's a pretty extensive offer for what Andre Drummond offers. As much as people want to believe that Andre Drummond is a scrub and like, oh, they only got a second round pick for him, you know, that's all that he's worth. Trust me, Andre Drummond is worth more than a second round pick, regardless of what people want to say about him and how like he hasn't evolved with the NBA and stuff like that. The guy is still like, he can literally still come out and give you a 20-20 on some nights. Okay, when they play the Pacers, and I know as a Pacers fan, when he plays against Miles Turner gets bodied almost every single time that he plays against Andre Drummond. And if I'm a Pacers fan and I'm saying that I think Andre Drummond is decent, I think he's still a good player. Okay, like, I'm going to be honest with you, as a Pacers fan, I would almost rather have Andre Drummond than Miles Turner on the roster. And the reason for that is because the past couple years, Miles Turner has been, like, a great value Kristaps Porzingis, and he's not even that. This year, he's finally starting to look like a decent center. So, like, a couple years ago, would I have traded Andre Drummond for Miles Turner? Absolutely. Like, that's something I would have done, like, 2 or 3 years ago. But Miles Turner is starting to look like an actual center, so we'll have to wait and see. But I do know this, Andre Drummond is worth more than a second round pick, okay? What happened between the Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons was highway robbery, okay? That's what that was. And now the Cavaliers understand what they have, and they're trying to flip it for assets because they know he's not coming back, and they got to try to get something for him. They know that he's worth more than a second round pick. And regardless of what you guys think, okay, he is worth more than a second round pick. I know there's a lot of people out there who think it's like controversial, like, oh, they're not going to get anything for Andre Drummond. Okay, they're not as dumb as the Detroit Pistons, okay? That's all I'm saying. Next is the Raptors. I already said this. If the Raptors want to trade for Drummond, they're going to have to do a three-team trade. So they're probably looking for a third team. Next, the third team that I think could make an enticing offer for Drummond as well is the Houston Rockets. Obviously they have DeMarcus Cousins, but outside of DeMarcus Cousins, their center position is scarce, man. They have PJ Tucker, but even PJ Tucker's not that big of a dude. Like, he's like 6'5", I think. So, yes, PJ Tucker's a very good defender as a whole, but he's not Andre Drummond, and I think that's a big problem with their defense right now. They have a huge hole in the middle. They got DeMarcus Cousins out here playing inconsistent minutes. They could offer a trade package like Dante Exum, Eric Gordon, and maybe one of those picks they just got for the James Harden deal, like a future second rounder. I would not give up Eric Gordon, a first round pick, and Dante Exum for Andre Drummond. But if you can throw a second rounder in there, give up Eric Gordon, who, by the way, is balling his ass off this year, and give them Dante Exum, who I don't think Dante Exum's really good at all. I think his contract is worth more than what he actually brings to the table. If you can grab an Andre Drummond, I would do it, mainly because you get that guy in the middle. And I watched them play Oklahoma City like a week or two ago, and I'm not even kidding. No-name players were just taking them to the basket. Like, I watched the Rockets play, even though they were like the number one defensive rated team in the NBA since the James Harden trade. They were like number one in defensive efficiency, but when it came to like defending in the middle and stuff like that, they have a huge hole in the middle. And if they can grab a guy like Andre Drummond, who can get you a ridiculous amount of rebounds, he can play defense for you, he can get you second chance points. If Eric Gordon is what you have to give up, then you give up Eric Gordon. They have so many shooting guards on their roster anyway. They just acquired Kevin Porter Jr. They got Ben McLemore. They have a bunch of guys on their roster who can shoot. So giving up Eric Gordon, I don't think is the end of the world, even though he is playing extremely well this year, I think. I think Eric Gordon has, now that James Harden is gone, we're starting to see Eric Gordon get more touches, and Eric Gordon's flourishing when he's getting those touches. So I do think that the Cleveland Cavaliers, I don't think any team is going to acquire Andre Drummond without getting scathed a little bit on either their roster or depth or something. They're going to have to give up something equal, I would think, to get Andre Drummond on their roster. Just saying. The last team I think that could really, really use Andre Drummond is the Sacramento Kings, and they're finally starting to give Hassan Whiteside a little bit more minutes. I'm starting to notice, like, he's not just riding the bench anymore, because they have legitimately the worst defense in the NBA right now. Like, if it's not the worst, it's definitely in the bottom five, and they could give up, like, Jabari Parker, and I know they're looking to move Harrison Barnes. They could give up Harrison Barnes and Jabari Parker to the Cleveland Cavaliers and acquire Andre Drummond. That would provide a huge, like, it would fill a huge hole they have in the middle at the big man position. Marvin Bagley is kind of coming into his own. It looks like Marvin Bagley is starting to play better, but it's just the idea. They have such a huge gaping hole in the middle, and they have Hassan Whiteside on their roster, but it's like they're not using him. So I'm not really sure what they plan to do. I don't know if it's just poor coaching. I don't know what it is, but defense is like non-existent for the Sacramento Kings this year. They have De'Aaron Fox, who is playing very well. They have Buddy Hield. They have a little bit of depth on their roster. You know, they have Marvin Bagley. So if you could acquire an Andre Drummond, I think that helps. And obviously Andre Drummond is not going to get the type of money he's getting this year ever again, like almost $30 million a year. Like, he's never going to get that again in his career. So it's just the idea, if they can at least acquire him and maybe convince him to come back, that's a huge win for them. You know, if they acquire Andre Drummond and start playing defense and start playing as a team and start winning games, that could be big for them. But I really think like a team that could really, really, really benefit from an Andre Drummond trade is the Dallas Mavericks. They're a team that is way better than their advertising on paper right now. I understand they got off to a pretty rough start. A lot of that I think has to do with Porzingis not playing for like the first 15 games or so. I expect the Mavericks to turn it around, but I think if they have to give up James Johnson, and James Johnson is getting paid an insane amount of money this year. He's getting paid $16 million. And if they can give up a Dwight Powell, who I like Dwight Powell, but I think Andre Drummond can be better, especially for what they're trying to do. If you can get and then you still keep Maxi Kleber, you got Josh Richardson, Tim Hardaway Jr. Like, I really think the Dallas Mavericks could make that work. And I honestly think the Dallas Mavericks are the best trade partner right now for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because we know the Celtics are not giving up Jaylen Brown to get Andre Drummond. They're just not doing it. Even though the Celtics could really, really use a center like Andre Drummond, and if they were to acquire Drummond, I would almost say they become a championship contender. But they would have to give up Jaylen Brown, and I don't think they're going to do that. But Kemba Walker they could trade Kemba Walker for Andre Drummond straight up, and it would work. But the thing is, Kemba Walker it's Kemba Walker. And also, like, Cleveland already has Darius Garland, Colin Sexton on their roster, so acquiring a Kemba Walker, I just don't think makes much sense for them. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of potential trades out there for Andre Drummond, but I really think if the Mavericks want to get their big man, like, because they've been trying to do it for, like, the past 4 or 5 off seasons now, they still have Willie Cauley-Stein as well. If they could acquire Andre Drummond, I think it would be huge for them, and I also think they're potentially one of, if not the best trade partner that can give them a little bit of what they're looking for. Not only do you get Dwight Powell, who's a young guy, they have Jared Allen, who's obviously been seeing more minutes since getting traded to the Cavaliers. They have Jared Allen. But yeah, if you could pick up a Dwight Powell, if you could pick up a James Johnson, who at the end of the year, James Johnson's contract expires. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? I don't know what they're looking for. I would think they're looking for younger assets, obviously, but I don't know if I would think they're looking for maybe 1 or 2 players and a second round pick, or a first round pick and maybe, whatever. Maybe they're looking for a first round pick and some average player that has some years left on their contract. I don't know what they're looking for, but I would assume, being in the Cleveland Cavaliers position, they're looking for a small forward like a Harrison Barnes, or maybe a Tim Hardaway Jr., or somebody like that on their roster. Because the small forward position seems like it's kind of lacking over there. And Kevin Love's another guy they're probably looking to move. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure what exactly is going on in Cleveland. I don't really know what the team is looking for, but these are just some of the trades that I think are definitely possible for Andre Drummond. So tell me what you guys think down below in the comment section below. A like helps me out. Subscribe if you guys want to see more. This has been the Fast Break Report, and I'm out of here. Peace, guys.